From the pit lane to the podcast, we are Bromula One. I'm Steven.
I'm Caleb.
We're missing Ryan today, but we just had a good experience watching the Singapore Grand Prix. Obviously, pretty amazing result. Carlos Sainz taking the win, huh? What do you think about that?
It's over. I can't believe it's over. I'm so sad for Red Bull. I thought they were going to win all the races, and the biggest hurdle we all knew was going to be Singapore, and they
Yeah,
just couldn't hook up their car.
I've had this one kind of circled, penciled in as the one that they were going to struggle with the most. It's just a really difficult track to get underneath your car, you know?
Yeah, that was it made for a frustrating weekend for Red Bull, but I think as Formula 1 fans, it was fun to see different people fighting for the lead. It was fun to see even Max fighting to overtake on a track that's hard to overtake. That was really fun.
Yeah, we knew they were going to struggle, but I don't think we had an idea that it was going to be this much of a struggle.
Yeah.
Neither car getting into Q3.
Yeah. I mean, they seem to have the back end of their car just not able to grip at all, which Singapore is a difficult circuit to have grip anyway, because as I'm aware, they're public streets during the year, and the only time this circuit is used for racing is this race. And so it's not rubbered in at all. And it's a night race too. Even though there's warm temperatures, the temperature isn't as hot. So it's just difficult to get some grip. And it seemed like several teams struggled, but mostly Red Bull, which is shocking.
Yeah, and then their Saturday struggles are not bailed out by their Sunday privilege, if you will, because it's very difficult to overtake at a track like this. The high
Mhm.
walls, very narrow. Even with the removal of those corners, those four corners, it just still wasn't enough to make the difference. So we kind of had
Mm-mm.
a parade for about 35 laps, but boy, did the end deliver. That was
That
pretty
was
crazy.
that was really fun to watch. I feel so bad for you, Steven, for all you listeners. Steven accidentally had he hopped on. We're in America, so we can't really watch a lot of these races live because they were happening at like 4 a.m. But Steven hopped on, hit play, and it accidentally jumped to the live race, and he jumped to the very last lap. So he already knew what was like gonna happen the entire race. So he may have had a little less exciting of an experience watching, but holy smokes, that was like, I mean, to me, just seeing not Red Bull in front was so fun to watch.
Yeah, no, I agree. We've talked all year. Could they finish the year unblemished with a perfect record? And we knew it was unlikely. We knew it was incredibly far fetched for them to have this much of a gap to their competition for the whole 22 races. Uh, hey, hats off to Carlos Sainz and Ferrari and the rest of the competitors, man. Because Red Bull wasn't even close.
They were not even close. I think seeing the performance that Red Bull put up this weekend made me take their car off of a pedestal that I was kind of putting them on, and it made me put Max on that pedestal. Because I feel like a lot after seeing this weekend, a lot of the credit kind of, in my opinion, should be shifted towards Max for what's been going on this whole season. And I think, especially with this, he finished P5, which is incredible in Singapore, where he started P11. So
Yeah.
I think after this weekend, Max is a little bit more of an influence on where that Red Bull's being placed versus the car itself.
Well, let's get into our predictions. Let's see how we did. And why don't you take us through yours, and we'll go through Ryan's, see how well he did, because I think he did better than the two of us.
Yeah, he did. Holy smokes. Ryan, dude, good job, man. You're on vacation right now. Yeah, you deserve to be on vacation for your predictions. But I had Lando as pole. He qualified fourth. He
Roll
wasn't too,
position.
he wasn't, yeah, role position. He wasn't too far off the top three, but he wasn't too close either. I think there was a gap between Lando and Hamilton qualified fifth, and there was a gap between Lando and Charles, who was third. And then my top three, I think I did pretty well on this actually. I had Lando P1, he finished P2. I had, this is the bad part, Alonso P2. He did not execute Order 66. He failed. I don't know if it was his fault though. Kind
Just
of.
missing a PK to get him to win in a Singapore Grand Prix.
Yeah. And then I had Hamilton P3, and Hamilton got P3. Courtesy of George.
Yeah, ours are similar in that regard. I had Alonso as my stinker, but I had him as number one. So I get double deductions there. I think I had
Yeah.
Max P2, not even close. He was
Oh man,
wasn't even looking like he was gonna get a top five there for a little while.
he had a good recovery drive that last stint.
And then I had Hamilton P3, which was dead on the money.
Look at
Not
those,
how I
man.
expected it to happen though.
No, that was shocking. Yeah. And then who was your weekend wanker?
For weekend wankers, I kind of went with all of Red Bull. Talked about Perez and I talked about Marco going
That's
into the
right. That's
weekend.
right.
I'm glad they didn't really give him a whole lot of attention, in terms of airtime. It's been talked about too much. It's time to move on. But Perez didn't show a whole lot of pace coming through the field, so I'm gonna give myself maybe half points for the Perez prediction.
I agree with that, especially considering he made contact with Albon at the very end there, and I don't think he probably should have made contact with Albon at all. But it just, yeah, that was pretty bad.
He also ruined Yuki's race fairly early on. That was kind of a
Poor
bad.
Yuki, dude. Can we talk about that? Can we talk about Liam Lawson and Yuki real quick?
Yeah, Liam Lawson might have been the bro of the race, with the exception of maybe Charles and his sacrifice.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so many things to talk about here. We had a really exciting race. To your point, Liam Lawson eighth,
He got eighth. I
remarkable.
thought he got ninth.
He got ninth. You're right. So
Okay.
we got 2 points. 2 points for that.
Whoa. They went from 3 points to 5 points.
Yep.
Everyone's been
That's
making fun of them for having.
40%. 40% of those points are from Liam Lawson.
They went from having four drivers with 3 points all season, and I'm sure Liam heard all that, and he says, "Shut up, I'll get two, got two," and now they have 5 points with four drivers. And I'm afraid Yuki will no longer be driving at AlphaTauri after that performance.
Yeah, that's gonna be rough. He's had plenty of time to gain an advantage. This is the car that he's used to, and to get outperformed by Liam so quickly, not a good look.
At Singapore, where Liam's never driven before, we saw how much Oscar struggled in free practice with the track, and to see Lawson, oh my word, that was, yeah. He earned himself a seat. He's for sure full time AlphaTauri next year.
Yeah, so now they have what, Red Bull and AlphaTauri. You've got 4 seats and 5 drivers. What do you do with them?
Five very
Max is
capable drivers too.
Yep, Max has obviously pinned himself into that Red Bull seat. Although if you look at this weekend, Max is washed. Maybe they look for something else to fill that seat.
Not an overreaction, not at all.
Can't even make it into Q3 though. What was he thinking?
Yeah. Oh, if he didn't have that little slip up, I'm sure he would have qualified top six.
Yeah,
Those
maybe it
Hasses
would have been a
though.
different race. Maybe podium was on the table for him then. Who knows?
Yeah, it seems like their car was pretty hooked up come like race pace. They had some pretty good race pace. I saw a statistic, and I think this is a little bit a little incorrect, maybe a little inaccurate just because of the way the strategies worked out, but race pace wise, the two Mercedes had the highest or lowest median lap time or average lap time. And then it was followed up by Ferrari, and then the McLaren and the Red Bull of Norris and Max had the like pretty much exact same average lap time. So Red Bull, I think, kind of hooked it up come
Yeah,
race
keep
time.
in mind context is important though, because
Yes.
Mercedes had 2 stops instead of just one stop. So you have a lot more time under those fresh tires.
Hmm.
But yeah, that's a good
Yeah.
point. So median takes into account, you're kind of ignoring the outliers. But yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I was like, you got to take this in the context. Those two Mercedes had different strategies, so I'm sure they would have had, a little worse lap time if they had only done the one stop strategy. But can we talk about that? Do you think that was a good call by Mercedes? Pitting
I
the
actually
two?
think so because we've talked about this in the past that Red Bull has been benefiting from being more aggressive with their strategy. Too often, you see Mercedes be too conservative, overly conservative with their tire strategy. But this time, they went for it and it paid off. I actually think, in hindsight, you could have maybe split strategy, keep Russell in P2, and then pit Hamilton, let him carve up and potentially catch and pass Norris. Then you would have had a driver in 2 and 3. But that's hindsight. You can't tell the driver in front because you probably would have lost the position to Hamilton too. Um,
Mm-hmm.
He ended up binning it himself, which is kind of ironic. He couldn't even survive the Russell tussle this time.
You got to
It's
trademark
always going to happen, whether
your
it's the
phrase.
last
Yeah.
lap or the first lap. It's
The
going to be
George
there.
Pedo. The George Pedo comes in, and this time he
Let's
just
let's
wrecked
call it
himself.
Jorpedo because
That
we
sounds a
use the
little.
full name. It's a little too risque.
Yeah, that's a little. Yeah, yeah. What? Yeah. Anyway, Jorpedo. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, but let's talk about Ryan's, man. I think he predicted Carlos Sainz on pole and Carlos Sainz in the win. So double points for you there.
What a bold prediction too. When he made that prediction, my initial reaction was like, "Dude, what are you talking about? Ferrari, like they're only track. To me, they were like a better Williams, where they were gonna be good in Monza and then just be bad everywhere else."
That's kind of interesting. We completely misunderstood, the car that translates from Monza to Singapore. On paper, characteristics are totally different. Lower speed, a lot more turns, different environment, hotter temperatures. But look at that Ferrari, man. Are they the best car on the grid now? Let's look at the standings here. Oh wait, they're they're third in the constructors. Why is this?
Yeah, that
But
was
they're
my
catching they're catching
catching Merc.
Mercedes.
That was my mid-season prediction was that Ferrari would jump Mercedes, and hey, that might come to pass, man.
You can
Um,
thank George Russell on that one.
yeah, that's true. I think Ferrari probably should have pitted Charles as well. Like you were saying with the two Mercedes. I think Lewis just wanted fresher tires. I think they were initially going to give George the preference and strategy and say, George, what do you want to do? And give George the choice. And George obviously chose new tires. And then I think Lewis was like, no, give me him too. What the heck?
The
I think,
problem is though, is because Leclerc was in front of Hamilton at that time, weren't they always just going to do what Ferrari didn't?
yeah,
Because if Ferrari pits, then Lewis stays out there, and we might have the same
result.
overtake, but who
Mm,
knows?
yeah. I think this that pit stop strategy highlighted a problem that Formula One has been trying to prevent. They're trying to make it a little easier to overtake, but when I saw a stat saying that it's hard to overtake when both cars don't have DRS. Obviously, it's easier to overtake when the car behind has DRS, the car in front does not. But it's the
Right.
hardest to overtake when both cars have DRS. And George had 1.5 seconds per lap pace over Lando, and he couldn't even overtake Lando for 2 or 3 laps.
I am remembering why Leclerc didn't pit because Mercedes was the only one with two sets of fresh mediums going into this race. They saved those in practice, in qualifying for this specific reason.
Oh
And for
wow.
that, you got to tip your hat to them. They nailed the strategy, they crushed it, and they were running cars in third and fourth on the final lap. So
Mm-hmm.
it was definitely on merit. It was definitely the right call. But yeah, back to what we were saying, Charles could not have pit. They didn't
Yeah.
have the tires available for it.
Yeah, I think I'd like to go back to your point saying how Mercedes was finally aggressive and they finally made an aggressive call, and I'm very happy to see that from Mercedes. I think all of the teams were a little overzealous to hold on to a victory now that Red Bull wasn't at the front. This was the first fight for first place we've seen all year, and it was really fun to watch. Even though maybe not a lot happened, it just the whole entire race changed. Normally it's just Red Bull slings it out 30-second gap and everyone behind is pushing and fighting, but everyone was managing from P1 to P20. I think there was like a tiny gap for, like you were saying, 26 laps. That was
Yeah, there
just
was
weird to see.
even like 15 laps if the car running in P2, if they had pit, they would have been 19th coming out behind Valtteri Bottas. The
Yeah.
only pass someone who started in the pit lane at that point. So it's Monaco 2.0. Not a huge fan of the circuit itself, even with the changes they made, because I
Hmm.
think we really got bailed out by that second safety car
Oh
that
yeah.
allowed Mercedes that extra pit stop, that allowed them to go on that strategy. I mean, good for them for taking the bull by the horns, but without that, we would have seen a bunch of one stops, really, I mean, kind of boring.
Would have ridden those hard tires for 40 plus laps all the way to the very end, or maybe it was like 38 it would have been at the end, but oh my word, yeah, that would have been a little boring, a little frustrating, and it seemed like those three cars in front all had like the exact same pace. There wasn't really one that had an advantage over the other. They were all just 1 second behind, 1.5 second behind,
Yeah, I mean,
Maybe
it was
go ahead.
super interesting with like 15 laps to go to see the pace that Lewis and Russell had. They were 2 seconds a lap faster than Carlos. And even
Hmm.
though 2 or 3 laps, it was kind of understood that Carlos was going to hold on to it as long as he didn't make a mistake. It was still pretty cool to see him back up into Lando to give him that DRS,
Yeah,
gives him protection. He insulates himself from Russell.
that was genius too. I was listening to a Ferrari radio, and maybe I misunderstood it, but it seemed like Ferrari wanted Sainz to get out of DRS of Norris. But Sainz was like, no, 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 no. I'm gonna back him up, knowing that it's extremely difficult to pass when both cars have DRS. He kept Norris right there, and he even said post race, he's like, I was happy that Norris helped me get P1, and I helped Norris get P2.
Right. And without the teamwork there, it's kind of like the peloton in Tour de France. You have to work together in order for both of you to prosper. If they had kind of separated out and every man for themselves, neither of them were going to win that race.
Easy
The,
pickings, man.
the Mercedes, without DRS, those cars were going to get picked off.
Mm-hmm.
They
Yeah,
were
that
just
was
too
really
fast.
that was fun to watch. So Signs, dude. I know we each have our own personal driver rankings. The past few weekends, has he jumped a few spots for you?
Oh yeah, I think it's no longer understood that Leclerc is just the number one driver at Ferrari. He's giving him a run for his money. He's not crashing out from the lead. He's not making the mistakes that we've seen Charles uncharacteristically make this year, and he's obviously capitalizing.
This is incredible. I think Signs is a huge. I remember my mid-season review. I was like, Signs is getting cooked by Leclerc, and yeah, I take that back. I'm so sorry. That was disrespectful. And Signs, thanks for proving me wrong. You're an incredible driver. You're never gonna listen to this. But yeah,
But hey, at least you apologized, and
yeah,
got that on the
yeah.
record.
Just karma, putting it out there in the universe. I got that energy off me. Aston Martin, dude.
Oof, had a rough one. I hope that Stroll is okay. I
Hmm.
think he didn't start the race because of a medical reason. I'm still feeling the effects of that high speed crash. Obviously, we hope he's okay, but he is not performing this year. Both things can be true, right?
Hmm.
We're ready for somebody else to take that seat and be a little bit more competitive. Alonso was running okay, but he had an issue as well and ended up like 17th. So
Yeah, yeah, he had that error with the pit lane entrance with the safety car where he caused himself to get a 5 second penalty because he went out of bounds, for lack of a better word.
that
And
pit entry is weird shaped, isn't it?
dude, yeah,
Like
that's such a
it's so
whack.
exposed and there's just a curb, but you're carrying so much pace in it. It'd be so easy to run over that curb and like Alonso
Hmm.
did. Max
Hmm.
looked like he was pretty close to going over too.
Oh, really? I didn't see that. Yeah, I think this was the one track for us to see how good Aston Martin car is, and yeah, I'm happy to write them off for the rest of the year. I
Yeah.
don't, I don't think they're gonna finish on the podium at all.
Yeah. Yeah, probably not the case.
Yeah,
But Norris P2, that was remarkable.
yeah.
I wanted to see Oscar do a little bit more. He got a
Mm-hmm.
little bit unlucky in
Was so
qualifying with the
unlucky. Yeah.
crash timing, but what can you do?
Yeah, he had a good recovery drive though. He finished seventh from 17th, so that's pretty good. I think that just shows that he had a lot more pace. Quick question before we just finish off here, man. Who do you think has top five fastest cars now after seeing that weekend? Do you have an overreaction to Red Bull? Do you think it's not
No,
that?
no, I think it just kind of confirmed what we were all suspecting that this race was going to be really difficult. It's just very uncharacteristic. You saw the same with Mercedes in 2015, where both
Yep.
Lewis and Nico qualified outside of the top five. But they did not win that race. So
Hmm.
you just never know with a track like Singapore. And that has just rang true this year, too.
Okay. Do you think the rule changes affected Red Bull? Do you think that was partially what was going on, or do you?
You know, time will tell. But
Okay.
Horner said that this is the same car they put out 2 weeks ago, so we'll just kind of wait and see what happens. I do
Mhm.
think that Ferrari has delivered on both Monza and Singapore, so I think that car is fast. I think they are definitely the second fastest car. If they can match up their strategy with their performance, I think they're going to be definitely contenders to take P2 in the Constructors' Championship.
Yeah, I agree. We'll see how the Red Bull car is at Suzuka. I think that will really tell whether they've, I guess, been affected a lot or not. I think they'll be all right. I think they will be fighting with Ferrari though the rest of the year, which will be fun to watch.
Yeah. Aston Martin going to keep plummeting, but
Hmm.
I think P2 in the championship for the constructors, that's where the money's at for the rest of the races.
Yeah, and it seems like McLaren and Mercedes are always neck and neck. Just ever since the summer break, it seems Mercedes has more race pace, McLaren has more qualifying pace. We'll see. Yeah. It's been fun though.
Yeah, it's
But
been
I think
good.
that's pretty much it from us, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I look forward to more close racing. It's exciting to see some of the rest of the teams catch up. Red
Yeah.
Bull's been sitting on top waiting,
Hmm.
and so this is what we've been waiting for. Let's see it again.
Woot woot, Carlos. All right. See you later.
All right, bye.